And I think the key is like really just accepting who you are and figuring out what works and doesn't work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Today, it's your birthday. Not sure what that means? Let us introduce you to this powerful concept and our community. We are Helene and Christina, and our mission is to empower, teach, and remind women to celebrate themselves. Combined, we have over 35 years' experience as therapists in private practice. We come to you not as your therapist, but rather two women in this life stage with you, your friends. Our podcast promises to talk about the hard or uncomfortable topics in a way to empower you, laugh along the way as part of healing, and find joy in life. What sets us apart? We leave you with gifts with each episode.
Now that we're friends, let's go ahead and make this official. We would love to help you start your Thursday mornings, so make sure wherever you follow the show, you listen to us and sign up for our free newsletter at yourbirthdaypodcast.com to receive the episode in your inbox weekly when we drop it. So I'm excited about this episode, and I'll share why in a minute, but it's also a super hot topic right now. We're hearing all sorts of things about adult ADHD, women with ADHD, neurodivergence, neurotypical, AUHD, and Helene and I are here to tease out the titles and help you gain a bit of understanding. We know it's kind of a TikTok craze right now, and so we are super excited to kind of give you a professional glance at it. Helene, do you find yourself having patients wondering if they have ADHD?
Sometimes. I don't think as much as you do, but I
Really?
definitely have some. Yes. I mean,
I literally get like two to
yeah.
three calls a day in my office of adults wanting to be evaluated. And so
Yeah.
the primary tool as mental health professionals that we use to diagnose is the DSM 5-TR. And so it's written by psychiatrists, just so you're aware, but they say the prevalence of ADHD in adults is only 3.55%. So, I'm one of like thousands of psychologists slash mental health professionals here in the Twin Cities. And so, what is it about and why is it so popular?
So first, we're going to go ahead. We're going to dig into all the acronyms. We're going to tease them out. But before we do that, I'm going to give another little tease. Right after this episode, we interview a wonderful, fabulous, totally real psychologist who specializes in this within her practice. And one thing she says is that oftentimes the symptoms of ADD or HD, if they haven't been diagnosed in childhood, for women may show up in really strong periods of big transitions, maybe
Mhm.
getting married, having children, perimenopause, which was interesting because after we had our second child, my husband, who has known me since I'm 21, came to me and said, I wonder if you have ADD. Like, I really think if you do. And I was like, what? I wasn't like insulted, but I was just shocked because usually I'm strong in my game. I'm I typically am, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll take the information. You're not saying this to whack me or hurt me. I'm going to ask my primary care doctor, who I trusted, and I loved my primary care doctor at the time. He loved women, take care of them. And he never wanted to do anything to hurt them. So he struggled, and that's why he wasn't a gynecologist. So I said to him, this is what my husband brought up to me, blah, 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 blah. What do you think? And he happened to say to me, Helene, I've gone to know you for a couple of years. And what I know is that you own a very big practice. You have two small children under the age of 5. You have 2 dogs. You have a house. You have a marriage. If a woman doesn't show up as ADD with all of that going on, I don't know what does. So I share that story because while I do have some people coming in wondering if they have it, I also have a lot of people showing up with the symptoms of it, and they may not be diagnosed with it because some of them are like, I want to invest, I want to go through the testing, but it also has to show up in a time of their life just being super busy. So I did a Christina move. I diverted. I'm going to bring us back.
No, I love that. And I love that you talked about ADD because
Yeah.
I think what we understood and what we were trained in school is that ADD was like attention deficit disorder without the hyperactivity. And then
Right.
ADHD had the type hyperactivity. Well, several years ago, they switched the DSM around and they
Hmm.
ditched ADD. So now we only have the diagnosis of ADHD, but there's three types.
Right.
There's the inattentive type, which was previously ADD at the time that Helene would have been talking to her doctor. And then there's the hyperactive impulsive, and then there's the combined type, which is both the inattentive and the hyperactive impulsive, which, yeah, so it's really cool. So I literally went through this just a couple months ago, and I've been open. One of my children was diagnosed a year ago, and I've been seeing it in my child for since kindergarten. But,
Hmm.
we had some COVID learning in there, we had a move in there, and similar to your doctor, I was like, I'm a firm believer that if any major life event has happened,
Right.
it's not the time to diagnose this. Like, I have a lot of parents who have kids, that are going through divorce or have kids that just had a major life transition, and they're like, I think my child's ADHD. And I am strong. Like, APA put an article out many moons ago, and I totally agree with it, that I will not diagnose if somebody's in the throes of a major life event or just overcame one. Your primary was right.
Yeah.
That's
So I
what
love that gift. If you're listening to this and you're wondering, is there anything with me going on? Also ask yourself, do I have a big life event? We're not deterring you from having the conversation, for seeking out support and perhaps help in diagnosis. It's also making sure that you give a full spectrum of your life when you invite someone else to be aware of possible
yeah.
treatment or exploration. Okay.
Well, yes. And so, here I am, a clinical psychologist. I evaluate kids for it multiple times a week, right? So this is
Mhm.
an area of specialty for me. And when I went to a colleague of mine, not the one we're interviewing, although she's amazing, I went to a different colleague and said, you know, I have always kind of punted to Ethan that our child has ADHD because he's kind of more the disorganized human in our family.
Right.
And I was like, this is you, this is you, this is you. And I said, but I look at my child and I'm like, holy cow, am I looking in the mirror? Holy cow, am I looking in the mirror?
Ah,
Holy cow, am I looking in the mirror?
right.
And I said, I really think I have ADHD. And she goes, you don't know that you do? And I was like, I was so shocked. I mean, I literally was speechless, and we all know I'm not speechless. And I was like, what? And she goes, you don't know? And I was like, no. And I have really good insight. What the hell?
Right.
And
What
she's
happens
like,
to a friend?
yeah. I said, she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I'm like, you didn't. I mean, I'm just sitting here stunned and need to process. But my feelings aren't hurt. I mean, I came to you with an open question.
Right.
And she's like, do you want to get evaluated? And I was like, yeah. And so then the interesting thing of it too is that Julie, who you all know that I like love,
Yes.
so as part of my evaluation, I got asked to have somebody close to me fill out a form. And I didn't choose Ethan because I just think like
Mhm.
Ethan loves me without judgment. And I
Right.
just didn't think he could be objective enough, was my thought.
Very
And so
fair.
I thought Julie could be more objective. Only I learned that, like, I'm a major masker, and I especially mask with Julie. So I got, like, so much insight and, like, aha moments out of this,
Mhm.
but I'm combined type ADHD.
Right. And I know we're going to go back to masking and talking a little bit, especially with women,
Yeah,
that they do that. Yeah. So, okay. So Christina has a really passion space about this, not only within her
I
practice, but
do.
also like a mirror experience that you have the courage to see something within yourself and invite someone you trust, two people, like this really good friend who actually I kind of name drop, or I think you do in the next episode, Ashley, who we also interviewed and is amazing. If
Yeah.
you are exploring a career change, go back and listen to that episode that you invited her to say something and you were shocked, but also experienced it because you value and respect her. And then also Julie. So it goes back to like, think about your village. And if you have to ask someone Who would you trust and believe that they would be honest with you? Okay. So we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about that diagnosis, but there's a couple of other words or a couple of other diagnoses
I think there's a
out
yes,
there.
absolutely. So we're hearing a lot more about adult autism.
Mhm.
And if you aren't familiar with autism, it traditionally is considered an impairment in social interactions in comparison to what we would call neurotypicals, which means like neurotypical is kind of like the average environment. And then neurodiverse is people who kind of think or behave differently, quote unquote. But the goal is to like just really honor and respect all of neurodiversity and, instead of categorizing. But with that said, so autism is considered a social disorder. And then what we used to have, and what you hear a lot, especially like 80s, 90s, was Asperger's disorder and
Yeah.
PDD NOS. And Asperger's was essentially some social awkwardness, but not the severity of autism.
Right.
And
There's
then
a lot of like missing social cues, I
yeah,
think would be a way that our audience can understand it. And
yeah,
also, they struggled or appeared that they couldn't read a room. I think those
right.
would be two pervasive things that if you're not in the clinical sphere and you're listening to us, would be two things that you would maybe see in people who, again, the diagnosis, Christine is about to go into it, no longer exists. But those were people who miss social cues, and often you may experience them as like, wow, they missed that. They just cannot read the room.
Yeah. And PDD-NOS stands for pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, which essentially says, you know, it's a little bit less than Asperger's,
Hmm.
but still missing social cues. So a few moons ago, the DSM took out Asperger's, took out PDD-NOS, and believe me, as mental health professionals, we were all freaking out, not thrilled, but they did.
Right.
And so now everything is under the label of autism. And then there's different levels, essentially 3 levels regarding how much support you need.
Right.
And then if you have language impairment or not, or, what are the impairments? So it's really evolved. And we are learning that the criteria that we used on children
Right.
earlier on, we've honestly missed a lot of people, primarily
Mhm.
because the focus was more on these were more male disorders, right? Like we
Right.
saw it more in boys.
Right.
And we didn't, in true research form, guess what? We didn't research girls, just like we don't research medical care for women.
Right.
And
And I
so,
think part of that is because boys would, and I know we're about to get into this, so I know I just jumped on you. I
no,
think historically, like boys would demonstrate behaviors
mm,
that set off a strong discomfort for people, most specifically, probably either in the classroom, I guess also at home. Like they're hyperactive, they're running around, they're blurting out, they're
yeah,
fidgeting, they're moving around. We can't keep them still. So the behaviors presented that way. So there was like, we were hyper focused in the clinical community as well as just people in general of noticing it in boys and perhaps men, but a huge population of the world, us girls and us women, were not getting the attention or the noticing.
well, and I think it's too like boys are groomed from early on that they've got to have a career and take care of a family and all that. So if there's a problem with a boy, we got to fix it. There's a
True.
problem with a girl. Oh, well, she can just be a stay-at-home wife, quote unquote. And I'm not dissing stay-at-home wives. Don't get me
Right.
wrong here. But that was the mentality. So it wasn't taken as seriously. Or girls got told, you have anxiety. You just talk too much. You'll grow out of it. Even boys got told, you'll grow out of it.
Right.
And then if you hear the term AUDHD, it's for people who have both autism and ADHD. So hopefully the terminology now is kind of making a little bit more sense when you hear people toss around these terms. You're not sitting in the dark. Because I have so many patients who are like, I don't know what any of this means. It's so overwhelming to me. And so I just felt like it was really important. And then I also think we need to talk about two big terms of neurodiversity and neurotypical.
Right. And that I find a lot within my couples. So I'm going to let you take this
Yeah.
one on in terms of talking a little bit more about it clinically, and then maybe we could sprinkle in some examples.
Sure. So neurodiversity just really means difference in brain functioning, particularly centered around sensory processing, which is kind of how you process through your senses. Your taste, touch, sound, what am I missing? Eyesight, hearing.
Noise,
Yeah.
noise.
How do you process through these things? And then executive functioning is your frontal lobe. This chunk of your brain right here that controls your attention, your focus, your organization, your planning ahead, all of that good stuff. And cognitive function is kind of our overall intellectual, how our brain processes the world, right?
Right. So I
Make
think
sense?
about when I think about neurodiversity and people hear that word, at least my experience is that there's also a very negative, kind of a dark connotation. But when
Mhm.
you explain it that way, that it really just means that someone who has that, their brain functions differently, centered around processing, sensory, executive functioning, and cognitive functioning. It's just that their brain is different. But I think without understanding what it is, again, going back to what I experienced, it creates a lot of fear because there is the unknown. So I love that we explained it to our audience.
And it's not, yeah. And I just see like people like, oh, somebody called me neurotypical and thinking it's like an insult or,
Right.
I'm neurodiverse, so I need accommodations and things like that.
I'm not normal.
Right. And here's what I would say, and this is not meant to diss anybody with neurodiverse or who describe themselves as neurodiverse. I do believe that really this world is full of diversity, which is
Mhm.
a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I love that brains all function differently, which is amazing, right?
Right.
And so, some of the most creative people in this world are neurodiverse. They think outside the box.
Mm.
If you're like me, you park outside the box. And they are also the ones that lead us to some crazy and awesome tech breakthroughs,
Mhm.
art breakthroughs, all of these things. Usually these people are neurodiverse.
Right. We need these humans.
We do. And here's what I would say, like, I read an article that 70 to 80% of entrepreneurs have ADHD.
Mhm. Not
That's
surprising
crazy.
when you break it down and we think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when people understand that some of those things that we just talked about could be part of who they are
Mhm.
and can vocalize it, that can be very helpful. Like, if someone that you are in connection with or was in your family and they cannot handle a lot of stimulation and you just find that they're like walking away from a crowd or like you're at a restaurant and suddenly they're like, we're done, gotta go. And you're
Mhm.
like, whoa, what's going on? It appears really rude, kind of short, dismissive, not thinking of everyone else. But if you leave this episode and you have that partner that you experience that and you can say, hey, I happen to hear something and it kind of aligns with what I experienced with you. Can I talk to you about it? If they say yes, then you could say, and again, don't throw a label out. You could say, sometimes I find that when we're in a place with a lot of stimulation, a lot of movement, a lot of people, a lot of noise, you want to get out very quickly. Does that align with you? Yes. Okay. Let's talk about what you need before we go into that space. Because when you just have to get out, it impacts all of us. And that doesn't feel good. So there's ways that you can bring it up, even without the label, if they're not diagnosed, that you could have really open and honest conversations about what you're
Mhm.
experiencing, make them increasingly aware, and work together with it.
100%. And I think, we're still evolving and learning. Thankfully, now the research is exploding regarding women and girls and ADHD, which is awesome to see.
Yes.
And we're learning how their symptoms were, like I said, misdiagnosed with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, things like that.
Right.
So it's huge. It's huge. I
It
think
is huge, and to think that we're not gonna be mislabeled
Mhm.
anymore and really be seen, respected,
Yeah,
and named with really what's going on provides the most amount of visibility, which I think women are screaming for and deserve.
100%. And I would say, I think we've got to really dig into like why it's misdiagnosed because I have a lot of people coming in and going, it's overdiagnosed, it's just a hot topic, it's just a term, it doesn't really mean anything. And I
Mhm.
really want our audience to be educated. I want you to understand because I just think it's important that we have knowledge. Knowledge is power.
Who
And
needs that?
yeah. So, one of the things that really stands out to me is that historically, boys have been diagnosed 3 times more than girls in childhood. However, in adulthood, it's even 1 to 1 for the male to female ratio of people who have neurodivergence, whether it be ADHD or autism or both.
That's huge.
Yeah.
3 to
So,
1 that girls are misdiagnosed in childhood, however, in adulthood, it's 1 to 1. Okay.
yeah. And I think a lot of that is because girls are seen as overwhelmed. Oh, they just have low self-confidence, they're daydreamers, they're just too talkative. I mean, how many girls
Mhm.
I feel like if we were in an audience, like, probably the
Right.
majority of our women would raise their hand because they got too talkative on their report card or too social, and those were some of the things I was, like, seeing in Savannah that were, like, making me giggle early on, or just, like, super outgoing, gregarious, and so, like, it cracked me up. We were just in London and she's just outgoing. And so we get to our hotel and she's like, "Mom, I want to check us in." And I was like, "Okay, just come with me. You can help me."
Mhm.
And so, like, the guy at the check-in counter was like giggling and he's like, "She's really outgoing." And I was like, "She is." And so, like, we giggled about it. And then when we were heading to Paris, I was like, "Svea, I'm like, the French are not quite as outgoing
Mm.
as people were in London.
Right.
And so, like, really outgoing social kids might be a lot for them. And
Right.
I want her to be herself. And I also want her to understand her environments, realize the audience she's going into, and then she can make decisions of if she wants to alter her behaviors, be herself, and let them deal with it. It's her choice, right? Her body, her
Mhm.
choice. But I want her to understand her environments.
So the beautiful thing about, like, girls, let's say, who can be viewed as outgoing and very social, there's a beautiful boldness.
Hmm.
There is the capacity to be seen. And as they're growing up, if they need some guidance or education, as we all do, about your audience, and when you can let that shine, and when you're not abandoning it,
Right.
but you're honoring where you're at and choosing when it can be experienced and also desired so that it is like a hell yeah versus being like a fuck no, you shouldn't be showing it then. So I love that you don't want her to not have that. It's a beautiful part of who she is, but educating her about when is the
Yeah.
best place to show it.
Well,
Awesome.
and letting her decide if she wants to show it or
Yeah.
not. And I think, it's not. So I think this brings us perfectly to masking. So masking is covering it up, compensating, pretending you're not different because there's a fear of being considered different, which maybe in a culture in a room is quote unquote bad or being considered dumb, right? Like
Mm.
for years when I did things that were quote unquote ADHD, I would be like, "Oh, that's the dumb blonde in me." And I would like make fun of it to mask it. And then people would giggle and let it go because I was like, "Oh, great, I screwed up." And now I realize like me running 5 minutes late is okay. It's not the end
Right.
of the world. It's just who I am.
Right.
I realize that some days I'm really, really focused and on my game and really organized, and other days it's amazing that I'm dressed in there.
And I think the beautiful thing is that when you can free yourself of not sprinkling some humor or
Right.
mislabeling it so it feels better for you and maybe there's that acceptance piece from others. But if you can just own it, like, it reminds me of a gentleman that I worked with many, many years ago, and he was beyond ADHD. He was super, like, also type A, which was, a very interesting combination. And once he just started saying and owning what he needed and who he was, it invited people to better understand him,
Yeah.
and his self-esteem was better.
Yeah.
So just owning it frees you and it invites others to either choose that they're going to accept the real you or if they're not. And again, remember, audience, we talk about this all the time. If there's a piece of your audience that's not accepting who you are and it's met with criticism, dismissiveness, shittiness, it's not about you.
100%. And I think too, like one of the things that I see in my clinical office, which has altered, kind of evolved over the years in what I'm looking for in girls, is not only do I look for all the symptoms that are quote unquote more boy symptoms,
Mm.
but I also look for, are they internalizing these behaviors? Because I realize like these are huge generalizations and I'm not trying to just completely gender type this. And I would say that, boys tend to be more of the hyperactive, like they act out, they're boisterous, class clown, they're always funny, that kind of stuff, where girls tend to internalize the behaviors.
Can you talk about that in case our audience is not familiar with what that might be?
Yeah. So they tend to be, like I said, great maskers. And when they screw up, similar to me, it really, really, really affects their self confidence.
Mm.
And so, like, they really beat themselves up and they really, really struggle with criticism because they are so hard on themselves. So, we see a lot of strong propensity towards perfectionism,
Mm.
strong propensity towards low self confidence. We actually do see a lot of comorbidity between anxiety and depression because the ADHD has made them feel so terrible about themselves.
So comorbidity, if you're not familiar with that term, means that kind of like two clinical spaces exist at the same time, if I'm explaining in that,
Yeah,
like,
so,
you
like, it's
it
more
Mhm.
likely to have anxiety and depression if they have ADHD,
Right.
that we see it more commonly. So, yeah, so it's crazy. So, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing in all the research that really stands out of, like, and I'm sticking with ADHD because it's something that I'm more familiar with in females is, the biggest top 10 symptoms I would say are forgetfulness, easily distracted, and easily distracted and difficulty focusing are different. So, easily
Mhm.
distracted is, right now I'm noticing the construction out my window, but then it would be that the other thing, so I can hear that and kind of be distracted by it, but I'm still focused. And then difficulty focusing is you cannot pay attention to what's in front of you. So it's not only like, "Ooh, I hear the neon lights on in my classroom." It's now I can't focus and all I can think about is the neon lights.
If someone saw something and maybe they were also reading a book, they're reading the sentence maybe like 10 times over because their brain is going
Yes.
back to that truck that was outside their window.
Yeah. Or you're sitting at your computer just kind of paralyzed and don't even know where to begin on a project or an email or something you need to do. And so you find yourself, doing other things.
Go
Where the easily distracted is, "Oh, I'm gonna sit and write this email," and then, "Oh, I have Amazon open. I think I'll go look on Amazon. No, I'm gonna go back. Oh, you know what? I forgot to buy this dress from J. Crew that I really wanted." Like, that's easily distracted. And then another big one is forgetting or not meeting deadlines. That's a huge one. Like, they have every intention to turn it in on time and they forgot.
Mm. The impact of them beating themselves up, like, it invites a
Ugh.
shame cycle.
Huge shame cycle. And even if it's like 5 minutes late, people with ADHD tend to really, like, really attack themselves. Like the self-critique is intense and the hypersensitivity towards criticism is huge. And that was a big one for me. That was a huge aha moment. And I'm going to get to that. But I also want to talk about forgetting to turn things in, and then more emotionally reactive, like just very sensitive and very quick to respond with emotions. And then we see the impulsivity more so in eating habits, meaning that, they have a propensity to binge eat and then not eat. Or we also see like just with the forgetfulness, forgetting to eat. And that's one of the biggest ones I do is I just like, it's all of a sudden 5 o'clock and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so flippin' hungry.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, I haven't eaten all day. Wow, that's terrible. I wasn't purposely restricting. I wasn't, it
Right.
wasn't like in my mind, I'm not going to eat because I'm afraid of calories. It was in my mind of like, yeah, I'm going to eat today. And then all of a sudden the day got the best of me and I was like, I haven't eaten all day.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. Also more prone, there's a ton of research showing more prone to unwanted pregnancies, more prone to drug and alcohol use, and more prone to poor money habits. Like just don't think or plan ahead. Organize like, hey, I've got these bills coming up. Probably shouldn't spend this money in my account right now.
Right. So I think, again, I go back to being that visual person. It's almost like if you picture that stoplight, and you'll tell me if this aligns, like they go from red to green without stopping at yellow, which I love
Mhm.
yellow because it gives you that moment to think about choices and consequences. But often that brain may, without either treatment or learning new habits and awareness about oneself, may go to red to green. And then there's just potentially consequences that again invite that whole shame cycle all over again that we've talked about. Whether your body just hurts because you haven't eaten, there's money that's been now putting you in the red, things like that.
Yeah. And then, like I mentioned before, the hypersensitive to criticism. And this was, like I said, a huge aha moment to me. And there's one memory that really like is a core memory for me. And I remember being in grad school and I had a professor in my practicum who said, Christina, you never bring in cases where we can like evaluate your work and give you feedback and, like you don't bring in your tough cases. And I
Huh,
looked at him and I went, are you dumb? In my mind, I thought,
right,
why would I bring in a case that I'm not doing well on for you all
mm,
to criticize me and
right,
you're grading me? Like, my grade is how I'm doing clinically. I'm not going to bring in something I'm failing at so that you can give me an F. Like, it just seemed so
mhm,
asinine to me what he was
right. I
asking
would,
me to do.
yeah, I'm going to avoid that vulnerability because of the fear of the criticism.
Yes. Yes. I was like, oh, no, 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 friend. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Like cases that I would struggle with, I would literally spend hours at home researching how I was going to figure out and help this person. Like this just determination I had to do it on my own because I couldn't ask for help. Because the problem was not that my skills weren't fully developed yet because I was a young clinician. The
Right.
problem wasn't that maybe I hadn't been taught this. The problem was me, and I needed to fix me.
Mm. So
And
it can
that's
really lead to some isolative behaviors, is what I'm hearing.
yes, absolutely. And so that's one of the biggest things that I see in females with ADHD is like this determination that I've got to fix myself on my own. And
Yeah.
then the disorganization. I wish I could literally walk you guys into my child's bedroom right now. She would kill me. But it is a chronic storm. And mine was as a kid too.
Ah.
It
Huh.
wasn't it wasn't until I was in college. My roommate Lori, if you listen, you're a saint. It was, I think it was junior year,
Right.
senior year. I don't know. A senior year. It was senior year. Now I figured it out. Lori was amazing. I remember our desks being next to each other in our dorm room,
Right.
and Lori's were, I mean, Lori's whole side of the room looked like It looked like it could be in a magazine. It was
Yep.
so well organized, everything was methodical, everything was, like, in its perfect place. She even had a candle. And then you look at my side of the room, and the books are stacked, like, 2 miles high. My desk is a disaster. Some books are on the shelf. My closet doors don't fully close. And I
Right.
think we were roommates for about 2 weeks, and Lori looked at me and she goes, "I can't live like this."
I can't live with you.
And I was like, "But why?" And she's like, "I can't live like this." And Lori literally changed me. I'll talk about it in the next episode too, but Lori literally was like, "Clean it up." And to this day, until my mom passed away, anytime she came in my house and it was clean and organized, she goes, "I love Lori. I love." It was so funny, but it's true. She did.
Right, and I
Um,
think kinda like you, I was more like Lori, like, people would walk into my dorm room and Sarah, I don't know if you're listening, and I love her more than anything. She is not ADD or HD at all. She just is beautiful at, like, giving herself grace and, like, choosing how she wants to be, where as we've learned from me, and I'm working on it always, like type A, very rigid. So people would walk in our room and be like, okay, there's Helene. It looks like it could be in a magazine. Like everything was done. My bed was made. Like everything was organized.
right,
And hers was absolutely clean and organized, but like she wouldn't make her bed maybe. And for me, I would be like, oh, I can't live like this. Like I had to make my bed and things like that. But now, like a million years later, like I can leave work without my bed being made. I can go like,
right.
I'm a work in progress, but it's just interesting that sometimes you notice pieces about yourself when you live with someone,
Mhm.
or if that person can be like, "Woo, I'm noticing this in you. What is that about?" Yeah,
Or
I love
business
stories.
partners.
Yep,
Like, this is you keep me on track. Like, Helene in our business, she does all of, like, the bookkeeping stuff because let's get real, it wouldn't get done with me. In all my other businesses, my husband does the bookkeeping
I was
because
like,
let's
my
get
husband
real,
helps me out some with that.
I it wouldn't get done. Like, I
Right.
literally was my accountant's nightmare before Ethan took over because it would be December, and I will still remember Helene and I both had the same bookkeeper,
Yeah,
Donette, when I lived in Florida. Donette would be like, "December, Christina, I went into your QuickBooks. You haven't done anything all year." And I'm like, "Yeah, Donette, I haven't." She's like, "You gonna organize that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I will."
maybe I'm paying you
So,
to do
like,
it. Yeah,
literally, I spent New Year's Eve morning since 2011, no lie, New Year's Eve morning organizing my QuickBooks every year.
I get it.
That's how bad I was.
Yeah,
And
right.
so and then it's also we do see, like, kinda some difficulty maintaining close relationships, which can be hard. Fortunately, I haven't had to deal with that. I have some really awesome friends in my life. I still have friends from high school, and I'm so grateful for that, but that is a common thing. So, I think if you're, like, listening to us and you're talking about it and you're hearing us and going, "Wow, I can really relate to that," or, "Yeah, I totally get it, Christina," or you're somebody like Helene who's like, "This explains that really frustrating person in my life." That I'm just like, "What's going on with you? You're really amazing, smart, and capable, yet."
Never thought that.
Yeah,
Right. So let's drop some gifts and some more aha moments.
yes. So, definitely don't hesitate to get evaluated, and also I would remind people that, like, CHAD, Chapter of ADD, is a great starting place. Twice exceptional stuff is really awesome, and I really wanna challenge people, like, we've talked about kind of the negative or the symptomology. ADHD could be a superpower.
Love that.
Yeah. One of my mentors many years ago did a PowerPoint presentation on all the incredible, wonderful people with ADHD. And I wish I had it because it was so profound of like all the super smart, creative thinkers
Mm,
out in this world who, you know, there's question of Einstein had it. There's question of Thomas Edison had it. There's some really famous actors and athletes that have been said they had it. And I think like it allows you to think outside the box, to
mm,
not have to do things the way that you're chronically told.
right.
And like I said, I think it's led to some really incredible discoveries in this world.
Yeah. And it invites acceptance of you when you get
Mhm.
curious, as Christina and I always say, and you have an awareness or a thought or a reaction to maybe how you've been, get curious about it
Mhm.
because we never want you to give away your life and your precious time. And when you get the help or support that you might need, it all goes back to having that it's your birthday life. So, do you want to sprinkle in some tools for them that maybe could be helpful if they are already diagnosed or struggling with some of the behaviors that we've talked about?
Yes. I'm a huge fan of any form of planner, Google Calendar, Skylight. Oh, I have to laugh about this. Skylight was on sale in August, and I finally bought one. Only in true ADHD fashion, it's sitting in a box in my kitchen.
We should have put it up when I came.
I didn't have it quite yet. But yeah, so I'm hoping like my husband, if you're listening to this, Ethan, set up the skylight for me, pretty please. Because I can buy it. I can have the best of intentions, but then like it stops. I think too, like our gift on learning to say no, because ADHD people like myself, ADHDers, it's hard to say no. Like we want to do it all. We are excited. Like our brain just is like, yes, 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 yes. And then we're like, oh shit, I can't do all this.
It's a little bit like preset in the next episode. Like your brain goes on fire. And you're like, what? We need to slow down the flames. Okay. So saying no and going back to our episode, the gift of no could be a beautiful toolbox for you.
Yes. And then also, I would say the episode we did just like 2 weeks ago on relaxation is huge. Really take time to like understand yourself and what relaxation means to you
Mhm.
because it may not be what it means to everybody else. Like a bubble bath may not be relaxing to you because your body can't settle down that much.
Right.
And know that about yourself. Know that that's not your jam and that's okay. I think also learning mindfulness, learning how to be quiet with your body and
Mhm.
yourself is really important. I love, like, I can tell you right now, if the Notes app didn't exist in my phone, I'd be lucky if I ever get anything done. So I currently have in my cloud 194 notes because I need them.
Right.
I need them. They are my saving grace.
So use it and don't judge it. Just say, this is what I
Mm-mm.
need and invite it to help you.
Yes, it's awesome. Time maps are huge, mapping out the time it takes you to do an activity. I do this with my daughter all the time. Like, how long do you think that will take you? We just did
Mhm.
it yesterday. She wanted to text her friend, and I told her she needed to empty the dishwasher before she did. She's like, "Well, I want to text her first." And I said, "Okay, well, how much time do you have before you need to leave?" "I've got 30 minutes." I said, "Right, you've got 30 minutes before you need to leave." And I said, "How much time do you think you need to talk to your friend?" She's like, 5. I said, "Okay, how long do you think it'll take you to do the dishwasher?" 15. Okay. So we just kind of went through it. And
Mm.
then she was able to go, "I'm going to do the dishwasher first." But we didn't get into the power struggle. She figured it out.
Love that.
And then give yourself less tasks than you expect to accomplish in a day.
Permission.
Hmm.
Mm. Love
And
that one.
then I love motivational music. Giving yourself regular breaks, like don't plan to do a giant activity all at once. Break it down. Fidgets, I often have something in my hand that I'm messing with because it helps me to focus better.
Right.
Don't be afraid to consider medication. I think that's hard. I
Yeah.
think there's so much negativity
Negative.
or worries around stimulant medication. And if
Right.
it's something that you need for your body, friend, give yourself permission to use it. And then there's so many awesome apps out there. And I think the key is like really just accepting who you are and figuring out what works and doesn't work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, friends, we thank you and thank yourself. You hopefully are saying a huge thank you for choosing and committing to stay focused in this episode. It's longer than we typically go, but it was action packed. And Christina and I hopefully sprinkled in some realness, validating how you're feeling. And whether it's either you or someone in your family, we hopefully you got a nugget out of it. If you found it helpful, please share it. Our community only gets as big as the invitations that you send out. We're trying to leave you with a challenge every week. So, our challenge is for you to figure out one tool, and we gave you some gifts. So rewind when you're done to help make your life a little bit easier this week. Hang out with us on social media during the week. And don't forget, on Mondays, Christina and I take turns and we do gifts from the couch. Until next week, friends, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.